So I want you guys to help me welcome to the stage. She is a professor at Columbia. She is the head of the creative writing department. Very impressive. She wrote this great book called American Diva. Please welcome to the stage my friend Deborah Paredez, everybody. Give it up for her. Oh, look at that. Set this up there. That was pretty good. Hey, how you doing? There you go. All right. Nice. Thank you for keeping it going all the way to the end. I appreciate that. That's the effort. All right. Well, how you doing? Welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. Okay. Cool, guys. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. Your book is great.
Thank you.
So for those of you guys who don't know, I didn't really do a great job of introducing. I just really jumped into it. The book is about basically American divas. You want to call it, we're going to get into the term and all that stuff. But think, Beyonce. Think Aretha Franklin. Think the word though too applied in a bigger context, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. I thought it was very good. First of all, congratulations. You got to butter up your interviewing. Interviewing 101. Okay? Take notes.
It's working.
Oh my God, I'm
Don't
sorry.
worry.
You don't kick them. No.
Thanks.
Okay, no problem.
Way to go.
All right. So, real quick, why'd you write this book?
Hi, everyone. I wrote this book because I have always, since I was a kid, been fascinated by women or female figures or feminine figures who were unapologetically larger than life. And I love performance. I studied performance, but it was those particular kind of performers who were just took up all kinds of space and didn't give a about it and didn't apologize ever for it. And so I thought, well, let's figure out why I love them, even when we're supposed to not love them, and which ones I love so much. And so it was sort of like an ode to divas, to these particular kind of women, I think.
Now, I thought that was interesting that the term diva that you used, by the way, I need to change this. It's really how inappropriate. It's not Sergio. For those of you guys watching at home. The term diva, I thought was really interesting. You really dove into the term and its use and all that stuff. But what is it? What is the word? What's the term? What's the difference between a diva and, let's say, just a regular female performer?
Sure.
Where does it come from?
Yeah. So for me, some people would disagree, but for me, a diva, first and foremost, is incredibly good at what she does. So absolutely virtuosic, supernaturally so. And then I think they also, what distinguishes them from, let's say, just a regular star or performer, would be having amazing charisma, and also someone who kind of is messy, breaks the rules, or kind of isn't always someone you should root for, but you root for her anyway. That's kind of what I see as maybe some of the differences between just a regular, star and a diva.
And this is interesting because then this gets into another thing you covered in your book, which is the term diva, as you guys know, is often used derisively. It's often used as an insult. I thought you could talk about that because I thought that was one of the more interesting parts of the book. It really challenges you to think about what a diva is and why a diva is thought of the way it's thought of. I thought maybe you could talk about that idea of how it's used as an insult.
Sure. I think that women who don't apologize, or even queer figures, whatever, who think of themselves as divas, who are out in public doing amazing things and don't apologize for it, often are thought of in derisive ways, right? How dare they? They're so haughty. How dare they be so, how dare Serena Williams not ever apologize for being so great at tennis, right? Or something like that. So I think that because of that, they're often seen that way. And I think it's always dangerous to be a kind of that particular rule-breaking person in public without caring what people might think about it. So that's something that I think has happened ever since the term kind of came into being in the 19th century and before. And then certainly in recent years, I think especially in the 1990s, I write about this, suddenly the term was kind of used, kind of somewhat often, but not all the time. And then suddenly it exploded. There's a 400% increase in our usage of the term in popular culture. And I think it was also because people were well, we don't use that F word anymore, that word feminist anymore. We're going to use this diva term now, but we're also going to be okay, yay, diva, but oh my God, diva. So I think it's always kind of coincided with okay, we're maybe celebrating this, but we're also kind of scared of it.
Right, and I thought what was interesting too about the book is that it really, it deals with something pretty pretty basic, I guess, in the sense that it comes from this. The insult comes from this place of denying someone individuality. That's pretty much it. And no, it's interesting because it usually, like in the book, you have a few people, someone like Tina Turner, or a lot of times minorities who are denied their individuality under the guise of diva, minority female, obviously, or minority non-male, also, trans especially.
Yeah.
But you have these different groups who are denied their individuality under this idea of being a diva when they're not asking for anything but to be accepted as an individual. Men do it all the time. They go out and they make a mess and whatever, and they're not thought of like, oh, what a diva, that guy. He insists on whatever. They're allowed to be imperfect.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And a diva is not allowed to be imperfect. They have to be perfect. And when you brought up Serena Williams, I thought was interesting in the book. Serena Williams did almost everything right as an athlete. The moment she slips up and shows her humanity, they bite her head off.
Yeah.
And that's not the same way that they treat some of the white athletes. And I think that was an interesting example of how you applied it to the Williams sisters.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially for black women, like, it cuts like in all the ways, so that they were denied being seen as like virtuosic divas, throughout time, but also always called a diva because they're so uppity, right? It was used as an insult toward them, not as a point of adoration. And so I think it's especially been true for women of color and black women in particular. And so I wanted to kind of mark that. I wanted to say, actually, in my pantheon of divas are these amazing women, almost all of them of color, precisely because they're virtuosic, not because they're badly behaved.
And do you think that, I guess, this idea of diva is tied to race, is tied to
I think
ethnicity?
I think any of our notions of like extraordinariness or glamour are always tied to race, right? It's always either, with associations of whiteness or, anything like that. I think that from the beginning of time, what we thought of as beauty can't help but be thought of in racialized ways. So, yes, I think it absolutely has to do with that. And also because sometimes divas are, seen as divas because they kind of mess with our ideas of race or gender. It's like, divine, what is that?
Right.
People, even I said that when I first encountered Divine. I'm like, what the hell am I looking at?
Yeah, Divine was a trans performer, was in Hairspray.
John Waters films.
Yeah, John Waters films. I mean, it sounds like what you're describing is kind of, diva is kind of the asterisk that's put next to a different type of beauty, to keep it separate from what the traditional definition is.
Yeah, because there sometimes can be something monstrous about divas, like in exciting ways. If we think about Lady Gaga and her little monsters even, or something.
Yeah, there was actually, it's funny you brought up Divine. She had a great quote where she says, basically it's to live in your sickness. It's to live in your wounds, live in your most base desires, even if it kills you. And I think really that's just basically saying, letting someone mess up, letting someone be themselves, letting someone be messy, because it's something that's allowed to, the dominant group. It's just not something that's allowed to the other group. And it's not like anyone's claiming perfection. And I think that was one of the things that this book kind of opened my eyes to, because the term diva, you think of people today like Mariah Carey, and they make fun of her for getting pushed out in a office chair to the New Year's celebration.
She's such a mess.
She got pushed out the whole way to the New Year's celebration in an office chair because she didn't want to walk. So someone was getting paid to push her in an office chair. But it's funny because I always think of those things, and your instinct is to be like, oh man, look at that. What an annoying, what an entitled, whatever. But you don't realize that's just a human, a person who's messing up, maybe, I don't know. But it's not something that, that other, let's say, white male performers don't do. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. They're writers to go perform wherever. You should see the kind of thing. So it's just kind of a way of picking on them, Well,
and it also is, I think especially for women, and Mariah is such a mess. It's kind of delicious. She really is. I remember being on this panel once actually about Beyonce, and then there was like this whole debate. Like there's either the Beyonce lovers who like the perfect image, or there's the, Mariah lovers who like the mess. But anyway, I think that there's something about which, I love a mess. But I think that, there's something about that insisting on on the most ridiculous things, that also there's something so like bold and that kind of makes you feel like, damn, I want to insist on myself like that in this world that's not going to ever let me.
Yeah, and that's really, and it's not something that other people in power don't do. People in power always insist on different things. It's just denying that power to someone you're not used to seeing have that power. which I thought was really interesting. Well, it's interesting you brought up Beyonce too, because one of the things you talk about in your book is, and I think this is an interesting point, especially when it comes to divas and artists generally, is this conflict. The conflict between, individuality. And you're right, the divas insist on being yourself, and they're inspiring. You want to insist on being yourself and insist on your own individuality, while at the same time, let's say, in like a Beyonce, right, also pushing materialism and commercialism and all these things. Like, it was funny, like I think of Beyonce, and you think of like the fact that
capitalism?
I think capitalism, for sure. But I think of the conflict, for example, I think it was under Obama, she was one of the spokespeople for childhood obesity, but she was also one of the spokespeople for Pepsi. Yeah. And you're just like, what the hell is that? What do you want us to do with that,
Well, and that's the thing about divas, right?
Yeah.
Like, because they're associated with consumption, right?
Yeah.
They have like all the furs and all the shoes and all the stuff. They can also represent values that are like really troubling, like big capital or Pepsi or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that they're often people where we love them, and then we're kind of like, oh yeah, she does that, yeah, she did that, and especially around, hell, like she's like all about the NFL now, like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. Or actually, I do know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's, again, like they're imperfect, and in a way, I think that's really hard to stomach, and I also think like, yeah, aren't we all?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and also it should also, I guess, trigger this idea of being like, okay, well, if I'm upset at that contradiction within this person, why am I not upset with that contradiction in everyone else above them?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And why am I singling them out?
Yeah.
Because that's something that every other, let's say, white male or whatever does as well.
Yeah.
And it's not something that.
And I think
is
the
exclusive.
thing about imperfection too is like divas do all their shit out in public,
Yeah.
right? And there's something about that kind of putting that vulnerability out there. So it's like their struggles are out in public, their amazing performances are in public, and that's, I think, part of the allure.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. In the book, you talk about how they're such an inspiration for people who are let's say disadvantaged, and it's because they insist on being themselves and being them individuals and also being imperfect. There was a funny story you talk about. I think it was Aretha Franklin. When she went to one of her friends' performances, she bought 2 tickets in the front row. Yeah. One for herself and one for her mink coat.
And one for her fur. Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Not the mink coat thing, but she bought a ticket for her coat.
Of course.
And I think that's just kind of like obviously you look at that and be like, all right, fur and all that stuff. But you think about someone like, that's just someone who doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Just totally is like, whatever, man. Here I am, and in the face of all these people who want to tell her off, and not just for doing that, for who she is, for what she looks like, etc.
Totally.
But it was great. So, okay. So we've talked about this a little bit. Why is this relevant today? Why is this discussion of diva-dom, diva-hood? I don't know. You're the professor, not me.
Either one's fine.
But how is this relevant today?
I mean, okay, a lot of reasons. So we haven't been able to elect a female president, right? I think that there have been, certainly during the last 20 years, like this proliferation of all kinds of divas, right? There's the tween diva and the teen diva and the the domestic diva and the superstar Beyonce type of diva. So it's like the category has proliferated, and I think it's still going strong. Like we often turn to them now, like we turn to Beyonce for guidance about feminism, about how to do different kinds of like style or whatever, right? So I think that it's still exactly what Beyonce did. But I think that it's still a part of, there's a reason Pose, for example, was such a big show, right, a few years back, or, that it's still very much a part of queer communities looking to sort of, become kind of form ourselves as communities. It's important for, young girls who are like, I want to dance like Taylor Swift if you think she's a diva or whatever. So I think those are some of the reasons why, I guess.
Yeah, and you brought up, the president thing.
Yeah, I mean, women in public still seem to be a problem.
Yeah, well, think of Hillary Clinton when she ran for president. I wasn't a huge fan, but the criticisms she got were just so filled with hate and vitriol, and they weren't really criticizing her for anything that any guy didn't already do.
Oh, totally.
And it was really just really, really like vicious. And yeah, she was kind of just an established politician. Whatever you think about her, but every other freaking guy was too. And they got it. They got to hide behind her and just take. She took all the lumps. So it's interesting to see that happen as well. I guess that idea of diva-hood applies across the board. And you mentioned Taylor Swift too.
Yeah,
I think
I don't know that I would categorize
that's
her
why
as
I bring
a
her
diva.
up. In your book, you talk about,
She's-
you brought up the idea, I thought it was interesting, the Hannah Montana thing, which I thought was funny. This idea that diva-hood has been kind of, I guess, can be co-opted a little bit and can be replaced with this kind of safer version of just a regular girl who can become a diva at night and then just return back to being a kind of conforming whatever type of,
Yeah, absolutely. You really saw that, like in all
Yeah.
this marketing to like girls, especially like for the last 20 years, that it became a way to try to soften the edges around what a diva could be. Because a diva, I think we could use more of them, quite honestly, because they are really pushing against the boundaries of like the normal or the good girl or whatever. And so I think I teach a class on divas, and there's often that point in the semester when people are like, yeah, Taylor Swift, no, because she's too normal or whatever. She's too like cheerleader with the football player boyfriend kind of thing. So people are like, no, sorry.
Although to push
But she's
back,
great.
the way her relationships get scrutinized,
Yeah,
the way
yeah,
her
yeah,
living out in
sure.
public gets scrutinized, I think would kind of parallel a little bit the way, obviously that's because she's a woman. She's getting this completely under the microscope, and in a way, she's just living her life, and she's writing the songs, and they make fun of her for doing that.
Yeah, living out there.
So
making
I
all
mean,
that
she
money.
may not be as 100% diva, but
No, she's
I'm not
phenomenal
a huge Taylor Swift fan, by the way.
superstar.
Just playing devil's
But
advocate.
Diva, maybe
I-
not so
I-
much.
Yeah. You guys are like, this guy has a cat and is a Taylor and is a Swiftie? What a weirdo, this
Look
guy.
at
But yeah. So, anyways, I thought that was a point to mention also too. I thought in the book you mentioned diva as being potentially an entry point to feminism, which I thought is worth talking about a little bit, because it is something as a word that's a little safer to discuss than saying a feminism,
Yeah.
where it's feminism, I guess, you mentioned Gloria Steinem's definition, which is just anyone who believes in full equality and humanity of both men, women, and anyone else, I imagine at this point too. And that is such a controversial thing to be considered feminism, whereas diva is everyone can love Beyonce, everyone can love and appreciate her unapologetic talent and whatnot. So how do you think that that does serve as an entry point to, and it's allowed for feminism to become more of a conversation?
I mean, I think it has been definitely used as that entry point. I think, though, that sometimes divas aren't necessarily going to be promoting feminist values, because they could be like super catty bitches, right? Like they can be like mean to other women, right? And that's okay. That's part of their imperfections, right? So, but I do think it has been used, especially since the 90s, as like, oh yes, even Beyonce with her like, look, like this is a kind of brand of feminism we can all get behind because it's shiny and it's sparkly and all that. So
and expensive.
It cuts both ways. Yeah, and expensive. Yes.
And expensive. Yeah. I also liked. I thought it would be worth talking too about. I thought the Venus and Serena Williams discussion was really interesting, because obviously with music it's easier to see the diva, big coats and all this stuff, and much more. That's part of the brand. It's more expected when it comes to musicians and entertainers, because you live your life loud. That's what people pay to see you do. And it's interesting because the diva thing with the sports applies not just to, I think, women in sports either. It applies to the way men are treated sometimes in sports as well. Mm-hmm. Diva's thrown around a lot, and it was thrown around a lot during the Black Lives Matter, and the way some of the male athletes got behind that cause. They were called divas and shut up and dribble or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I thought it'd be interesting to just quickly talk about that, the Venus and Serena Williams thing.
Sure. I mean, I'm a longtime fan, and I was really struck by when they were, because they started so young, right? So they were like kids when they were starting to be champions, and it was right in a moment when the idea of a diva girl was really popular in popular culture, but they're, so it was like, yay, be a diva girl, be like Hannah Montana. And yet they're trying to do exactly that, right? They're being excellent, they're not apologizing, and they're being completely viciously attacked, right? Completely just treated like crap. And so I was wanting to show, like, hey, yeah, it's okay to be a diva girl if you're like shiny, bright, Hannah Montana blonde and white. And here are these two women who are not being this grateful black athlete trope that we've seen a lot in sports. And so following that and then following her career to see, you know, whether it's, I love that moment, I don't write about it, when Venus actually is doing this press conference and the press is just, you know, doing its usual, you know, I don't know, disrespect. And she's just like, yes, I know none of you could, she meant to say none of you could hold a candle to me, but she says none of you could light a candle to me. And I thought it was so perfect because it's like, right, none of you are going to worship me, you know? And I thought that's pretty much right. She just knew it from the time she was 14 until, you know, her 40s. And same with Serena, like when she got mad finally and like, you know, yelled the obscenities that she yelled, which was pretty awful at, you know, the line judge. It was like, oh yeah, see, it's always been this way. And it's like, actually, all those times that she didn't get mad don't count, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, I wanted to move on now. We covered the serious stuff, you know. I wanted to move on. I'm gonna fly through this because I had trivia, and I don't know you want to see it. Maybe I can get to it at the end. But I wanted to talk about. Oh crap! Okay, there's us. You know, the bookworm there. I wanted to talk real quick. Do some rapid fire questions. I forgot to make the graphic. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna get ready.
I know. I forgot. I had a lot of stuff to do today, okay? I had to pick out this sweater. Hello.
Like
Yeah, exactly. I'm an imperfect diva. Hello.
you are, absolutely.
Accept my imperfections. Anyways, it's time for rapid fire questions. I want to kind of get to know you. Everyone here wants to kind of get to know you a little bit. Your book is great. It'll be on sale after the show. I'll give you guys a few minutes to buy them. But real quick, let's just jump into them. Quick questions, quick answers. Don't mean to emphasize that. Sorry. But here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
All right, here we go. We're going to do the rapid fire questions. I get to there. Here we go. All right. Sorry, I'm taking up time here. All right, we got to go. Okay. What's the craziest thing you've seen in New York?
Well, the craziest thing that's happened to me is my life has been saved twice on the streets of New York.
Wow.
One time I was stepping off onto Park Avenue and a car came and a woman actually grabbed the hood of my coat
Whoa.
and pulled me back onto the sidewalk.
Wow.
Yes. And then another time I was choking on some bread because, of course, I was eating and walking like New Yorkers do. And I started choking and I didn't have anybody around me, so I went to this bodega and this guy in the doorway of the bodega knew immediately what was happening to me, and I just grabbed his arms and he did the Heimlich and he saved my life then.
Wow.
Twice, yeah. That's New York.
Crazy.
So that would be my...
Wow, that's pretty impressive. The closest thing I have to something like that is I was walking across an icy street once, and in the middle of the street, I did like a cartoon and went like,
Oh,
whoa,
yeah.
and fell on my back. And after I landed on my back, this woman walks by me and goes, "That's why I didn't step there," and keeps walking. Yeah.
That is also very New York. That's totally New York.
Very different stories.
Very New York, both of them.
All right. Who is your favorite diva and why?
Oh, I knew you. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to say my Tia Lucia.
Oh, okay.
My aunt, although Tina Turner comes a close second, so I'll say her too. But my very first diva was one of my aunts who was like this working class Mexican-American woman who was just lived her life outrageously. She taught me how to egg a house. So you gotta love her for that.
Important stuff to know.
Important stuff.
All right, that's a good answer. Okay, all right. If you could live anywhere other than New York City, where would you live?
Oh, I love city and I love beach, so I will say Barcelona.
Ah, Barcelona.
And I love like beautiful, crazy art. So.
Nice. You know, in Barcelona, they're going around shooting with water, all the tourists.
Yeah, I know. So I really can't live there because there, yeah.
Although, in all fairness,
and should they? And they probably should.
Yeah. In all fairness, that's pretty cute.
Yeah, it is.
You know, that's kind of like adorable. You know, going around shooting with water guns.
Yeah,
Like, oh, you. If I was there, I'd be like, oh, you kids.
Yeah, I know.
Just let me eat my paella here.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
What's your favorite lyric of a song?
Okay. Well, I'm a poet also, so I love Joni Mitchell.
Nice.
So, okay, I'll say the beginning of A Case of You, which is when our love was gone, you said you were as constant as the northern star, and I said, constantly in the darkness. Where's that at? If you want me, I'll be in the bar. So I thought, I love that about her, because it's like, oh, it's romantic, but it's also very irreverent.
Yeah, that's right. Referring to the bar. I guess I would have also accepted, I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Get up again.
You're never going to keep me down. All right, what's a good slogan for New York? That's it. Good work.
Yeah.
That's the slogan. Just sighing.
Just sighing. Exactly. Another day on the one train.
That's the slogan.
Actually,
we got it. Put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, do you have one for real?
I mean, I don't know. There's something about, like, New York always rises from the ashes, right? So something like, I would have like an emblem, like a phoenix or something.
I hate to break it to you. There's already a city called Phoenix.
I know. Too bad.
You have to do better.
See, that's why I'm not in marketing, right?
I thought you were a poet,
I know,
Deborah.
I know.
No, I'm just kidding. All right.
Clearly not a good one.
Phoenix, New York. I like it. Got a ring to it. All right. How does New York City inspire you?
You know, just today, I was actually on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, just north of South Bronx. And it inspires me because you still can find places where you can buy the mozzarella from the guy who made the mozzarella, right? You can still find even though it's absolutely like fading fast with gentrification, but you can still find the bodega with the guy who will save your life, right? Like, that's how it inspires me.
Yeah. I mean, they'll probably still save your life in 20 years. They'll just charge you a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's going to cost you. You're going to have to sign up to be a rewards member.
Totally.
All right. What's your favorite book of all time? What book would you recommend to someone if they're like, give me a book. I need to change my life. I just need to be inspired. What's the book you give? Whatever it is.
Okay. Well, I would... There's an essay. Does that count? Can that count?
Sure.
Essay by Audre Lorde called "Uses of the Erotic," and it's about like how she finds the erotic in every day.
Wait, who was it?
Audre Lorde.
Audre Lorde.
Yeah.
What was
Famous black feminist uses of the erotic, and it's a great essay. It's all about like how you can find the erotic in every day.
Some of this audience might be like relieved not to have a full book.
See? Yeah, nobody reads anymore, so here's a little essay.
You kids are like, can you give us your most influential TikTok account?
I know.
All right. What place in New York best represents the city to you?
Any place that's still where people can still afford to pay the rent. You know?
Well, when you find out where that is, I want to be inspired.
I know, me too.
Anyone in particular, though?
I mean, I mentioned the bodega a few times because I do feel like the places to me that represent New York are the ones where you still have people who can like do the work they want to do in the place. So it's the bodega, or it's the like guy who repairs my shoes, or it's the woman who's like baking the bread, even if she's not baking the bread for sure, but she's selling me the baked bread, right, at the bakery. So those are some places. I mean, I'll always have it's so cliche, but I'll always have a soft spot for Grand Central Station. Because, when I first moved to New York area, I was living, farther out of the city, and I would like arrive there, and, you just like, oh my God, I'm like in the city. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's right. The quote, I guess, Penn Station used to be really beautiful, and then they demolished it. The famous quote is, you used to come to the city. Come into the city like a god, and now you scuttle in like a rat.
Like a rat. It's true.
But
now they named it after Moynihan.
That's right, named after Moynihan. Now you guys know when you go to if you want to be a bummer with your friend when you're walking through Moynihan Station, mention them benign neglect.
Yeah, benign neglect.
Be like, why do we invite this guy places? But I got one last question, and we'll wrap it up. This is a very important question, Deborah. Will you be my friend?
Of course I will.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so
I'll take that mic from you. Thank you so much. All right. One more time for Deborah Paredez. All right. So, guys, we have reached the end of the show. Did you guys enjoy yourselves, huh? London?